For as long as anyone in the quiet town of Briarwood could remember, the old forest beyond the northern hills had been spoken of in whispers. People called it Eldoria. No map showed its paths. No traveler ever agreed on where its borders began. Some said the forest had once been a kingdom, hidden from the ordinary world by an ancient spell. Others believed Eldoria was nothing more than a story invented by generations of dreamers. But 12-year-old Daniel Carter had always believed there was something real beyond those trees. On a cool autumn evening, Daniel sat beside his bedroom window, watching the last orange light disappear behind the hills. His grandmother had given him an old wooden box that afternoon. It had belonged to his grandfather, who had disappeared many years ago while exploring the northern forest. Daniel carefully opened the box. Inside lay a small golden key. It was unlike any key he had ever seen. Tiny symbols were carved along its surface, and at its center was a strange mark shaped like a crescent moon. Beneath the key was a faded piece of paper. Daniel unfolded it slowly. 3 words were written across the page. "Find the golden door." His heart began to beat faster. He turned the paper over and discovered a hand-drawn symbol of the northern forest. Then, beneath it, were 7 words that made him forget the cold evening entirely. "When the moon rises, follow the stars." That night, Daniel waited until the house became silent. He put the golden key in his pocket, slipped on his jacket, and quietly stepped outside. Above him, the stars were unusually bright. And far beyond the hills, deep inside the forbidden forest, a single golden light suddenly appeared. Daniel stared at it. For some reason, he knew it was waiting for him. He took his first step toward Eldoria. Daniel walked beneath the ancient trees, listening to the soft crunch of leaves beneath his boots. The golden light in the distance remained perfectly still, shining between the trunks like a lantern waiting in the darkness. The deeper he went, the quieter the forest became. Soon, even the wind disappeared. Daniel stopped and looked up. The moon had risen above the branches, and its silver light fell directly onto a narrow stone path that he had not noticed before. He remembered the message. "When the moon rises, follow the stars." Daniel followed the path. After several minutes, he reached a small clearing. In the center stood an enormous stone covered with glowing symbols. The same crescent moon symbol carved into his golden key appeared on the stone. Daniel reached into his pocket. The key suddenly became warm. Then something unexpected happened. A soft voice whispered from somewhere among the trees. "Daniel Carter." He froze. "Who's there?" No one answered. The voice came again, gentle but distant. "You have finally returned." Daniel's eyes widened. "Returned? I've never been here before." For a moment, everything remained silent. Then the stone began to glow. A golden line appeared across its surface, forming the shape of a door. Daniel slowly approached. The golden key lifted from his hand. It floated through the air and slipped perfectly into a tiny keyhole that had appeared in the center of the stone. Daniel hesitated. He knew that once he turned the key, something would change. But he also knew why he had come. He gently turned it. A deep sound echoed through the forest. The stone door opened. Beyond it was not another part of the forest. Instead, Daniel saw a vast valley beneath a purple sky, surrounded by mountains that seemed to touch the stars. In the distance stood a magnificent city filled with golden towers. Daniel could hardly breathe. Then he noticed someone standing on the other side of the doorway. An old man wearing a dark blue cloak was watching him. The man smiled sadly. "Your grandfather knew you would come." Daniel stared at him. "My grandfather?" The old man nodded. "He left Eldoria many years ago to protect you." Then his expression became serious. "But now the protection is fading." Far across the magical valley, a dark shadow slowly rose behind the mountains. And Daniel realized that his journey had only just begun. Daniel stood frozen before the glowing doorway, staring at the strange world beyond it. The old man waited patiently on the other side, his silver hair moving gently in a wind Daniel could not feel. "My grandfather is alive?" Daniel finally asked. The old man's smile faded. "He was alive when I last saw him." Daniel stepped through the doorway. The moment his boots touched the other side, the stone door behind him disappeared. He spun around, but there was only a wall of smooth black rock. "Don't be afraid," the old man said. "The door will return when Eldoria decides you are ready." "What is this place?" "Eldoria." Daniel looked across the valley. The golden city in the distance seemed almost unreal. Tall towers rose above sparkling rivers, and thousands of tiny lights floated through the air like fireflies. Somewhere beyond the city, soft bells rang beneath the purple sky. "My name is Elias," the old man said. "Your grandfather and I once guarded this kingdom together." Daniel looked at the golden key in his hand. Why did he leave? Elias turned toward the mountains. Because something awakened beneath Eldoria. A distant rumble rolled through the valley. The ground trembled. Daniel felt the key grow warm again. What was that? Elias looked worried. The Shadow King. Daniel had never heard the name before, but something about it made the air feel colder. Who is he? Long ago, he ruled Eldoria with kindness. But he discovered an ancient power hidden beneath the kingdom. He wanted immortality, and the power changed him. His heart became darker than the deepest night. Elias lowered his voice. Your grandfather helped defeat him. Then why is he coming back? Because the golden key was never meant to destroy him. Daniel looked down at the key. Then what does it do? Elias stared directly into his eyes. It opens the final door. Another rumble shook the valley. This time, black clouds began spreading across the distant mountains. Elias quickly turned toward the city. We must go. Before the Shadow King discovers that you have returned. Daniel followed him along the glowing path. But somewhere high above the golden towers, two enormous red eyes slowly opened. And they were watching Daniel. Elias led Daniel down the winding path toward the golden city. With every step, the strange world of Eldoria seemed to become more beautiful. Silver streams crossed beneath crystal bridges. Tiny glowing birds flew between enormous trees, leaving trails of blue light behind them. Far away, bells continued to ring softly, as if the entire kingdom already knew Daniel had arrived. But beneath the beauty, Daniel sensed something uneasy. People watched him from windows and doorways as he passed. Some whispered to one another. Others simply lowered their heads. Why are they staring at me? Daniel asked. Elias remained silent for a moment. Because you carry the mark of your grandfather. Daniel looked at his hand. The crescent symbol on the golden key was glowing. Before he could ask another question, a young woman hurried toward them. She wore a long green cloak and carried a small silver lantern. Elias, she said breathlessly, the eastern watchtower has fallen. Elias's expression changed. How long ago? Minutes. Daniel looked toward the mountains. A thin line of darkness was spreading across the sky. The young woman noticed Daniel. Her eyes widened. Is that him? Elias nodded. This is Daniel. She stared at him for several seconds before whispering, the guardian's grandson. Daniel felt uncomfortable. Everyone keeps talking about my grandfather. What did he actually do? The woman looked at Elias. He finally answered. Your grandfather saved Eldoria. Daniel stopped walking. He saved this entire kingdom. Not alone, Elias said. But he made the sacrifice that sealed the Shadow King away. Daniel touched the key in his pocket. And now I'm supposed to finish what he started? No, Elias replied quietly. You are supposed to discover what he never knew. Before Daniel could ask what that meant, a loud horn sounded from the city walls. Once. Twice. 3 times. The people immediately rushed indoors. Elias grabbed Daniel's shoulder. Stay close. Above the city, the purple skies suddenly turned black. A cold wind swept through the streets. Then a voice echoed across the entire kingdom. Eldoria has waited long enough. Daniel looked toward the northern mountains. A massive shadow was moving between them. The voice came again. And now the golden key has returned to me. Daniel felt the key burning against his chest. For the first time, he wondered whether finding Eldoria had been a mistake. Then, deep inside his mind, he heard a familiar voice. His grandfather's voice. Daniel, whatever happens, never give them the key. Daniel stood in the middle of the silent street, unable to move. His grandfather's voice had vanished from his mind as quickly as it had appeared. Did you hear that? Daniel asked. Elias looked at him carefully. Hear what? My grandfather. He spoke to me. Elias's face became pale. That should be impossible. Another horn sounded from the city walls. This time, the sound was followed by shouting. Elias pulled Daniel toward a narrow stone building. Inside. Quickly. They entered a small room filled with old maps, books, and strange glowing objects. Elias shut the wooden door and placed his hand against it. A soft blue light spread across the surface. What are you doing? Daniel whispered. Keeping the Shadow King from seeing us. Daniel pulled the golden key from his pocket. Its light had disappeared. Why does he want this? Elias walked toward an enormous map hanging on the wall. The key opens a place called the Heart of Eldoria. It contains the oldest magic in this kingdom. And the Shadow King wants it. He believes that if he reaches the heart, he can become powerful enough to control both Eldoria and your world. Daniel stared at the map. My world? Elias nodded. The doorway between our worlds was sealed centuries ago. Your grandfather helped keep it closed. A sudden crash shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. Elias looked toward the door. They found us. Daniel's heart raced. What do we do? Elias opened a hidden compartment beneath the floor and removed a small wooden box. Inside was a folded piece of parchment. This belonged to your grandfather. Daniel opened it with trembling hands. A familiar handwriting covered the page. If Daniel ever reaches Eldoria, take him to the moonlit lake. Do not trust the golden towers. The answer lies beneath the water. Daniel read the words twice. Why would my grandfather tell me not to trust the city? Elias looked toward the window. Because he discovered something before he disappeared. What? Elias hesitated. That the people ruling Eldoria may not be who they claim to be. The door suddenly exploded inward. Elias grabbed Daniel and pulled him through a second passage hidden behind the bookshelves. They ran through a dark tunnel beneath the city. Behind them came heavy footsteps. Daniel clutched the golden key tightly. Then he heard a whisper from the darkness ahead. Daniel. He stopped. The voice sounded exactly like his grandfather. Come to me. Elias grabbed his arm. Don't listen. But the voice came again, softer this time. Daniel, I have been waiting for you. And somewhere ahead, a small golden light began to glow. Daniel stared at the golden light ahead. For a moment, he forgot everything Elias had told him. The voice in the darkness sounded so real. So familiar. Grandpa. Elias tightened his grip on Daniel's shoulder. Keep walking. But I heard him. You heard something that wants you to believe it is him. Daniel looked back toward the tunnel. The voice had disappeared. They continued through the narrow passage until they reached a stone staircase. Elias climbed first, then pushed open a heavy wooden door. Cold night air rushed over them. They were standing outside the city walls. Ahead, a silver river curved through a quiet forest. Moonlit Lake is beyond those trees, Elias said. Daniel followed him. The forest here felt different from the one near Briarwood. Tall trees surrounded them, their leaves shimmering beneath the moon. Occasionally, tiny lights floated between the branches. After nearly an hour, they reached the lake. Daniel stopped. The water was perfectly still. There were no ripples, no insects, not even a breeze. At the center of the lake stood a small island with a single white tree. Elias pointed toward it. Your grandfather left something there. How do we get across? Elias looked at the golden key. Perhaps you already know. Daniel stepped toward the water. As soon as his boot touched the surface, a circle of golden light appeared beneath his feet. He took another step. The water held him. Slowly, Daniel walked across the lake. Halfway to the island, he heard a sound behind him. Elias was no longer there. Daniel turned. The shore was empty. Elias? Nothing. The lake suddenly became darker. Daniel looked beneath the water. A massive shadow moved below him. He froze. Two pale eyes opened in the depths. Then a voice whispered from beneath the lake. You carry the key of the guardian. Daniel stepped backward. The water beneath his feet trembled. Who are you? The creature rose just enough for Daniel to see the outline of enormous silver wings. I am the last keeper of the moonlit lake. Daniel held up the key. My grandfather sent me here. The creature studied him silently. Then it lowered its head. Yes. Daniel swallowed. Where is he? The creature's eyes softened. He came here many years ago. Is he alive? The creature looked toward the white tree. Your grandfather left a message for you. A small golden door appeared in the tree's trunk. Daniel approached it. The key began to glow. And for the first time since entering Eldoria, Daniel felt certain that he was about to discover the truth. Daniel placed the golden key against the tiny door in the white tree. It clicked. The trunk opened silently, revealing a narrow hollow filled with soft golden light. Inside was a small wooden box. Daniel carefully removed it. The silver-winged creature remained in the lake, watching him. He opened the box. Inside was a faded photograph. Daniel's breath caught. It showed his grandfather standing beside Elias, both of them much younger. Behind them stood the golden city of Eldoria. But there was someone else in the picture. A young woman stood between them. Daniel recognized her immediately. It was his grandmother. He stared at the photograph in disbelief. My grandmother was here. The creature spoke from the water. She was born in Eldoria. Daniel looked up. That's impossible. She always told me she grew up in America. She was sent away to protect her. Daniel turned the photograph over. There were words written on the back. Daniel, if you are reading this, the Shadow King has awakened again. There is something your family never told you. The golden key does not belong to Eldoria. It belongs to your bloodline. Daniel read the message again. His hands trembled. What does that mean? The creature answered. The key chooses a guardian. Every few generations, it returns to the family of the first guardian. Daniel looked at the key. Then my grandfather was a guardian? Yes. And my grandmother? The creature lowered its head. She was the last princess of Eldoria. Daniel felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath him. My grandmother was a princess. Before he could say anything else, the lake began to shake. Dark clouds covered the moon. The silver-winged creature suddenly lifted its enormous wings. He has found you. Daniel looked toward the forest. Between the trees, dozens of black figures were moving silently. Elias appeared among them, but he was not alone. His hands were bound. A tall man wearing a black cloak stood behind him. Daniel recognized the cold voice immediately. "Give me the key." The Shadow King stepped into the moonlight. His face was pale, almost human, but his eyes glowed like burning embers. Daniel backed toward the lake. The Shadow King smiled. "You have your grandfather's courage." He raised one hand. "And soon, you will have his fate." The golden key suddenly became brighter. Then a second doorway appeared beneath Daniel's feet. And the lake began pulling him downward. Daniel fell through the glowing doorway. For a moment, there was no ground beneath him. He dropped through darkness surrounded by tiny golden stars. They moved past his face like sparks carried by a gentle wind. Then he landed softly on a field of silver grass. Daniel sat up and looked around. The moonlit lake was gone. So was the Shadow King. Above him stretched a deep blue sky filled with enormous stars. In the distance stood a lonely stone tower. Daniel reached into his pocket. The golden key was still there. He heard footsteps behind him. Daniel turned quickly. A girl about his age stood several feet away. She had dark brown hair, a green cloak, and a small silver pendant around her neck. "Who are you?" Daniel asked. She looked at the key. "My name is Lily. Are you from Eldoria?" She nodded. "Where are we?" "The Forgotten Valley." Daniel frowned. "I've never heard of it. Most people haven't." Lily walked closer. "This place disappeared from every map hundreds of years ago." Daniel stood. "Why did the key bring me here?" "Because the Shadow King cannot enter." Daniel looked toward the distant tower. "What is that?" "The Tower of Memories." Daniel felt a strange chill. "What does it do?" "It shows you the truth about your family." Daniel remembered the photograph of his grandparents. "Can it show me my grandfather?" Lily nodded. "But there is a price." "What price?" "You may discover something you wish you had never known." Daniel looked down at the golden key. After everything that had happened, he knew he could not turn back. "I need to know the truth." Lily smiled faintly. "Then we should go before sunrise." They began walking across the silver field. As they approached the tower, Daniel noticed hundreds of names carved into the stone walls. Some were familiar. Some were ancient. Then he saw one that made him stop. His grandfather's name. Beneath it was another name. His grandmother's. And below both names were 4 words. Guardians of the Final Door. Daniel touched the inscription. Suddenly, the tower shook. A warm light appeared above them. Inside that light, Daniel saw a memory. His grandfather stood beside his grandmother. They were holding the golden key. And between them stood a young boy. Daniel stared at the boy. He looked exactly like him. Then his grandfather spoke. "If the Shadow King returns, Daniel must never learn who his father really was." The memory vanished. Daniel stood speechless. Lily looked at him. "What did you see?" Daniel slowly turned toward her. "I think my family has been hiding much more than Eldoria." Daniel could not stop thinking about the memory. His father. Why had his grandfather wanted to keep the truth hidden? Lily watched him quietly as they entered the Tower of Memories. Inside, the walls were covered with hundreds of glowing symbols. Each symbol seemed to contain a moving image, like a tiny window into the past. "Which one is mine?" Daniel asked. Lily pointed toward a circular symbol near the center of the room. The tower chooses. Daniel approached it. The symbol suddenly turned golden. A soft light surrounded him. Then the room disappeared. Daniel found himself standing in an old stone courtyard. His grandfather was there, younger than Daniel had ever seen him. Beside him stood Daniel's grandmother. And in front of them was a tall man with dark hair. Daniel recognized him instantly. His father. Daniel had seen only a few photographs of him. His father looked frightened. "You have to take Daniel away," he told Daniel's grandfather. "Eldoria is no longer safe." Daniel's grandmother shook her head. "He deserves to know where he comes from. If he knows, the Shadow King will find him." Daniel watched silently. Then his father removed a small silver pendant from his neck. "I'll take the danger with me." His grandmother began to cry. "You may never return." "I know." The memory changed. Daniel saw himself as a baby, sleeping peacefully in his mother's arms. His father stood near the doorway. He kissed Daniel gently on the forehead. Then he whispered something. "You are the last hope of both worlds." The memory faded. Daniel returned to the tower. His eyes were wet. "My father was from Eldoria," he whispered. Lily nodded. "He was one of us." Daniel looked at her. "Where is he now?" Lily hesitated. "I don't know." A deep sound suddenly echoed through the tower. The walls began to shake. Lily looked toward the entrance. "The Shadow King has found the tower." Daniel gripped the golden key. "But you said he couldn't enter the valley." "He couldn't." Lily looked frightened. "Not until you opened the memory." Dark cracks appeared across the stone doorway. Something was breaking through. Daniel looked at the key. "What do we do?" Lily reached for his hand. "There is one place he cannot follow." "Where?" "The final door." Daniel remembered the inscription. "Where is it?" Lily pointed upward. "Above us." A staircase of golden light suddenly appeared, spiraling toward the top of the tower. Behind them, the entrance exploded. A cold voice filled the room. "You cannot hide forever, Guardian." Daniel and Lily began climbing. And far above them, an ancient golden door slowly opened. Daniel and Lily climbed the glowing staircase as the tower shook beneath them. Behind them, the Shadow King entered the tower. His footsteps were slow and deliberate. He did not need to hurry. "Daniel," his voice echoed upward, "your family has lied to you for your entire life." Daniel kept climbing. "Don't listen," Lily whispered. "But what if he's telling the truth?" "Truth can be more dangerous than lies when someone uses it to control you." They reached the highest chamber. There stood the golden door. It was enormous, covered with ancient symbols and surrounded by a faint silver glow. Daniel approached it. The golden key became warm. Then the door spoke. Not with a voice, but directly inside Daniel's mind. "Only the one who remembers may enter." Daniel closed his eyes. He remembered Briarwood. His grandmother. His childhood bedroom. His father's photograph. The night he found the key. Then he remembered his grandfather's warning. Never give them the key. The door began to glow. Daniel placed the key inside the lock. Behind him, the Shadow King appeared at the top of the staircase. Lily stepped between them. "You cannot take him." The Shadow King smiled. "I do not need to." He raised his hand. Lily was thrown across the chamber and landed against the stone wall. "Lily." Daniel ran toward her. "I'm okay," she whispered. The Shadow King slowly approached. "You finally understand, Daniel. Your father was not a hero. Daniel stared at him. What are you talking about? Your father betrayed Eldoria. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. He abandoned his people. That is not true. The Shadow King smiled. He took the golden key and tried to destroy the final door. Daniel looked at the key. Why? Because he discovered what lies beyond it. The chamber became silent. What lies beyond? Daniel asked. The Shadow King's smile disappeared. Your world. Daniel stared at him. The final door is not a doorway into another kingdom. It is a doorway between Eldoria and Earth. The golden door began to open. A brilliant white light poured through the cracks. The Shadow King stepped closer. Your father wanted to seal it forever. Daniel looked at Lily. Why? Before she could answer, a voice came from beyond the door. Daniel knew it immediately. His father. Because Eldoria is not the world you think it is. Daniel froze. The door opened completely. And standing on the other side was the man Daniel had spent his entire life believing was gone forever. Daniel could not breathe. The man standing beyond the golden door looked older than the photographs Daniel remembered, but there was no doubt. It was his father. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then Daniel whispered, "Dad." His father's eyes filled with tears. Daniel. Daniel stepped toward him, but stopped just before the doorway. You're alive. I am. Why did you leave me? His father lowered his head. Because staying would have put you in danger. Daniel's voice trembled. Everyone told me you were gone. I know. You let me believe that for years. I had no choice. The Shadow King laughed softly behind them. There is always a choice. Daniel turned. Is what he said true? Did you betray Eldoria? His father looked at the Shadow King. No. But I did something that made him believe I had. He looked back at Daniel. I discovered that the golden key was never created to give someone power. It was created to protect both worlds. Daniel held the key tightly. Then why does he want it? Because the key can open the heart of Eldoria. Whoever controls the heart can change the boundary between worlds. The Shadow King stepped forward. Enough. Dark energy spread across the chamber. Daniel's father moved quickly. Daniel, listen carefully. You cannot let him take the key. I know. No. You don't understand. If he touches it, the door between Eldoria and Earth will break permanently. Daniel looked through the doorway. For the first time, he could see Earth on the other side. He saw familiar things, trees, roads, distant lights. He saw his hometown. Briarwood. His home was only a few steps away. Daniel suddenly understood the danger. If he opens the door, he can enter my world. His father nodded. And millions of people could be caught between both worlds. Lily slowly stood behind him. There is only one way to stop him. Daniel looked at her. What way? The key must be returned to the heart. His father shook his head. That would require a guardian. Daniel understood immediately. Me. His father looked at him sadly. Yes. The Shadow King raised his hand. The tower trembled violently. Stone cracked beneath their feet. Then let us see, he whispered, whether the guardian is truly worthy. Daniel looked at his father one last time. Will you come with me? His father smiled. I have been waiting for you. Together, Daniel, Lily, and his father stepped through the golden doorway. Behind them, the Shadow King followed. And as the door began to close, the entire kingdom of Eldoria disappeared beneath a storm of golden light. Daniel stepped through the golden doorway and found himself standing in the middle of Briarwood. Everything looked exactly as he remembered. The familiar streets were quiet beneath the moonlight. Porch lights glowed warmly along the houses, and the distant sound of a train drifted through the night. For a moment, Daniel felt safe. Then he looked behind him. His father and Lily stood beside him. The golden doorway had disappeared. Daniel turned toward his father. "How do we get back to Eldoria?" His father pointed toward the old clock tower in the center of town. "The doorway is hidden there." Daniel remembered passing the tower countless times. "I've never seen anything strange there." "That is because you were never meant to see it." They hurried through the quiet streets. But when they reached the clock tower, Daniel noticed something disturbing. Every clock in town had stopped. His father looked up. "The Shadow King is close." A cold wind swept through the street. The golden key began to glow. Daniel pulled it from his pocket. A thin golden line appeared across the ground, leading toward the clock tower. They followed it inside. The tower was dark and silent. At the center of the room stood an enormous clock covered in strange symbols. Daniel noticed the crescent moon symbol. "The key," his father said. Daniel placed it against the clock. The entire tower began to shake. The hands of the clock moved backward. Then the wall behind it opened. A staircase descended into darkness. Lily looked at Daniel. "Ready?" Daniel nodded. They climbed down. The staircase seemed endless. At the bottom was a vast underground chamber filled with ancient paintings. Daniel walked closer to one. It showed the first guardian standing before the golden door. Beside him was a young woman. Daniel recognized her. His grandmother. But there was something else. Behind them stood the Shadow King. He was young. And he was smiling. Daniel stared at the painting. "He knew my family." His father nodded. "He once protected them." Daniel looked at him. Then what happened? Power changed him. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed through the chamber. "Not power." The Shadow King appeared at the end of the passage. "Fear." Darkness spread across the floor. Daniel's father stepped in front of him. The Shadow King smiled. "You finally brought me the guardian." Daniel raised the key. "You'll never have it." The Shadow King's eyes burned brighter. "We shall see." The chamber doors slammed shut. And somewhere beneath Briarwood, an ancient machine began to awaken. The underground chamber began to tremble. Ancient gears turned inside the walls, their deep grinding echoing through the darkness. Dust fell from the ceiling as golden symbols appeared across the stone floor. Daniel held the key tightly. "What is happening?" His father looked around. "The old gateway is waking up." The Shadow King stood calmly across the chamber. "After all these years," he said, "the Guardian has finally returned." Daniel stepped forward. "You keep calling me the Guardian. What does that really mean?" His father answered quietly. "It means you are the only person who can restore the balance between Eldoria and Earth." Daniel looked at the key. "And if I fail?" His father did not answer. That silence was enough. Lily moved beside Daniel. "You won't fail." The Shadow King raised his hand. A wave of darkness rushed across the chamber. Daniel's father quickly created a wall of golden light. The darkness struck it with a thunderous sound. The wall began to crack. "We have to reach the gateway," his father shouted. Daniel and Lily ran toward the center of the chamber. There stood a circular platform surrounded by 12 stone pillars. Each pillar carried a different symbol. Daniel recognized one immediately. The crescent moon. He placed his hand against it. Nothing happened. "Try the key," Lily said. Daniel raised the golden key. The moment it touched the pillar, every symbol began glowing. the chamber filled with a gentle humming sound. Then a voice spoke from everywhere at once. Guardian recognized. A golden path appeared beneath Daniel's feet. It led toward a massive circular doorway. Daniel stepped forward. But suddenly he saw something inside the doorway. His mother. She was standing alone in their old house in Briarwood, looking frightened. Daniel. He stopped. Mom. Lily grabbed his arm. It's a trap. Daniel stared at the image. His mother looked directly at him. Please come home. His heart ached. He wanted to run to her. His father stepped beside him. Daniel, remember what I told you. The Shadow King can use memories, fears, and love against you. Daniel closed his eyes. He thought about his mother. He knew her voice. He knew her smile. But something was wrong. His mother never called him by his full name when she was afraid. She always called him Danny. Daniel opened his eyes. That isn't my mom. The illusion shattered. The Shadow King screamed. The golden gateway burst open. Beyond it was Eldoria. But the kingdom was no longer peaceful. Black clouds covered the sky. Golden towers were burning. And thousands of people were fleeing through the streets. Daniel looked at his father. We have to go back. His father nodded. Together, they stepped through the gateway. And behind them, the Shadow King entered Eldoria with a smile. Eldoria was burning. Daniel stood beneath the darkened sky, staring at the golden city he had once admired from afar. Smoke curled above the towers, and distant bells rang endlessly through the streets. People were running toward the western gates. His father grabbed his shoulder. We need to reach the heart before the Shadow King does. Where is it? Beneath the palace. Lily pointed toward the city. The palace is surrounded. Daniel looked at the golden key. It was glowing again, brighter than ever. Then we go through the forest. They hurried away from the main road and entered a narrow path between the trees. The forest seemed to recognize Daniel. Branches moved aside as he passed. Small golden lights appeared along the ground, showing them the way. After several minutes, they reached a stone bridge. On the other side stood a massive golden gate. Daniel's father stopped. This is where I leave you. Daniel stared at him. What? I have to hold the Shadow King back. No. You just found me. I'm not leaving you. His father smiled. You've already become stronger than I was at your age. Daniel shook his head. I don't want to lose you again. His father placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. You won't. Then he turned toward the forest. A dark figure appeared between the trees. The Shadow King. Go, Daniel's father said. Daniel and Lily ran through the gate. Behind them came the sound of magic colliding. The palace stood before them. Its enormous doors were covered with cracks. Inside, the halls were completely silent. Daniel followed the golden light from the key. It led them down a spiral staircase beneath the palace. At the bottom, they found a circular chamber. In the center stood a stone pedestal. Above it floated a glowing crystal shaped like a human heart. The Heart of Eldoria, Lily whispered. Daniel approached it. The crystal pulsed softly. Then it showed him a vision. He saw his grandmother standing before the heart. Beside her was the Shadow King. They were young. They were smiling. Then the vision changed. His grandmother handed something to the Shadow King. A small silver pendant. Daniel touched his own pendant. It was identical. Lily stared at him. That pendant belongs to the royal family. Daniel looked at the heart. Why would my grandmother give it to him? The chamber suddenly went cold. A voice answered from behind them. Because she loved me. Daniel turned. The Shadow King stood in the doorway. His cloak was torn, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. He held Daniel's father's broken sword. "Your father is gone," he said. Daniel's heart stopped. Then the Shadow King smiled. "And now, grandson of the Guardians, it is time for you to choose." Daniel stared at the Shadow King, refusing to believe his words. "My father is not gone." The Shadow King slowly lifted the broken sword. "You always were hopeful." Lily stepped beside Daniel. "Don't listen to him." The Shadow King smiled. "You know nothing about what happened between our families." Daniel looked at the silver pendant hanging around his neck. "What did my grandmother give you?" The Shadow King's expression changed. "For a promise." "What promise?" "She promised that if I protected Eldoria, she would return to me." Daniel frowned. "But you became the Shadow King. I became what fear created." He looked toward the glowing heart. "Your grandmother believed the heart could change me. She was wrong." Daniel stepped closer. "You're lying." "Am I?" The Shadow King raised his hand. The room filled with light. A vision appeared. Daniel saw his grandmother standing beside the young Shadow King. She was crying. "I cannot stay," she whispered. "You promised." "I have a family now." The Shadow King looked heartbroken. Then the vision changed. Daniel saw his grandfather arrive. He took the golden key from his grandmother. "You must leave," he told her. She nodded. Before she disappeared, she gave the silver pendant to the Shadow King. "I will return someday." But she never did. The vision vanished. Daniel looked at the Shadow King. "She abandoned you." His expression hardened. "Yes. And you blamed everyone." "I waited for her for centuries." Daniel shook his head. "That doesn't give you the right to destroy two worlds." The heart suddenly pulsed. A golden beam struck the floor between Daniel and the Shadow King. A voice echoed through the chamber. "Only forgiveness can open the heart." The Shadow King stepped back. "No." Daniel understood. The heart was not asking him to defeat the Shadow King. It was asking him to forgive him. But Daniel could not. Not after everything. Not after his father. Not after the threats against Earth. "I won't forgive you." The heart became dim. The Shadow King smiled. "Then Eldoria belongs to me." He reached toward the crystal. Daniel raised the golden key. The key flew from his hand and entered the heart. A tremendous wave of golden light exploded through the chamber. The Shadow King screamed. The palace began to shake. Then Daniel heard a familiar voice behind him. "Daniel." He turned. His father stood in the doorway. Alive. But he was badly wounded. Daniel ran toward him. His father smiled. "I told you." Daniel hugged him tightly. "I thought I lost you." His father whispered. "You haven't lost me yet." Behind them, the heart began cracking. And from inside the crystal came a voice neither of them had ever heard before. "Wake the first guardian." The words echoed through the chamber. "Wake the first guardian." Daniel slowly turned toward the heart. The crystal was covered with glowing cracks, but it had not broken. "What does that mean?" he asked. His father looked troubled. "I was hoping we would never have to find out." Lily stepped closer. "Who is the first guardian?" "The first person who ever carried the golden key." Daniel looked at the crystal. "Where is he?" His father pointed toward the floor. "Beneath us." The stone chamber suddenly opened. A spiral staircase appeared, descending into complete darkness. The Shadow King had disappeared. Daniel looked at Lily. We have to follow him. His father shook his head. No. The first guardian has been asleep for thousands of years. If he wakes, there may be no way to control what happens next. Daniel remembered the voice. Then why did the heart tell us to wake him? His father looked at him. Because Eldoria is dying. Daniel glanced around. The golden walls were losing their light. If we don't do anything, what happens? Both worlds begin to collapse into each other. Daniel took a deep breath. Then we go down. They descended the staircase. The air became colder with every step. After a long journey, they reached a massive underground chamber. In the center stood an ancient stone throne. A figure sat upon it. He wore golden armor covered with dust. His hands rested on an enormous sword. His face looked strangely peaceful. Daniel approached slowly. Is that him? His father nodded. The first guardian. Daniel noticed a golden symbol glowing on the guardian's chest. It was identical to the mark on his key. He reached toward it. The guardian's eyes suddenly opened. They were bright silver. Daniel stepped back. The ancient guardian stood. The entire chamber shook. Who carries the key? He asked. Daniel swallowed. I do. The guardian studied him. Then the bloodline continues. Daniel looked at his father. What does he mean? The first guardian turned toward him. Your family has protected Eldoria for generations. But the final guardian is different. Different how? The ancient warrior looked toward the ceiling. The final guardian must choose which world survives. Daniel's heart sank. Which world? Eldoria. The guardian paused. Or Earth. Silence filled the chamber. Daniel looked at his father. There has to be another way. The first guardian slowly shook his head. Every guardian before you believed the same. Then a distant explosion shook the underground chamber. The Shadow King's voice echoed through the darkness. You have found him. The first guardian reached for his ancient sword. Then the final battle has begun. The ancient guardian lifted his sword, and the underground chamber filled with golden light. Daniel could feel the ground trembling beneath his feet. His father stepped forward. We need to get back to the heart. The first guardian shook his head. The heart has already chosen. Daniel looked confused. Chosen what? You. Daniel looked down at the golden key. Its light had become softer now, almost like the glow of a candle. But I don't understand. Why would I have to choose between Earth and Eldoria? The first guardian walked toward him. Because the worlds were separated for a reason. Long ago, their magic became unstable. When the boundary was created, each world was given its own path. He pointed toward the ceiling. But the Shadow King wants to tear that boundary apart. Daniel looked at his father. And if he does, Earth and Eldoria will begin to merge. Mountains may appear in cities. Rivers may vanish. Time itself could become confused. Lily stepped closer. Then we have to stop him. The first guardian nodded. Correct. A tremendous explosion shook the chamber. Dust fell from above. The Shadow King appeared at the far end of the passage. His dark cloak moved like smoke. You continue to misunderstand me, he said. Daniel stepped forward. You want to destroy both worlds. No. The Shadow King looked at the first guardian. I want to restore what was stolen. The boundary was created to protect both worlds, the first guardian replied. It was created because your ancestors feared change. The Shadow King raised his hand. Dark energy raced across the floor. The first guardian struck it with his sword. Golden and black light collided, filling the chamber with thunder. Daniel shielded his eyes. "Lily, stay behind me." But Lily stepped forward. "I can help." She raised her silver pendant. A beam of pale light shot from it and struck the Shadow King. He staggered backward. Daniel stared at her. "That pendant. My family has protected the royal bloodline for centuries," Lily said. The Shadow King looked at her with surprise. "You are one of them?" Lily nodded. "My grandmother was the last royal advisor." The Shadow King's expression softened for just a moment. Then the chamber cracked beneath his feet. The Heart of Eldoria began glowing through the stone above them. Daniel suddenly heard a voice inside his mind. Not his grandfather. Not his father. The voice was his own. Choose. Daniel closed his eyes. He saw Briarwood. His mother. His home. Then he saw Eldoria. Its forests. Its people. Its golden towers. He realized something. He didn't want to choose one world. He wanted to save both. Daniel opened his eyes. There must be another way. The first guardian smiled. Now you understand why you were chosen. The golden key rose into the air. And for the first time, it began changing. The metal slowly transformed from gold into brilliant white. The Shadow King stared at it in disbelief. No. Daniel reached toward the floating key. The white key floated above Daniel's hand, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. The Shadow King stepped backward. What have you done? Daniel looked at him. I chose neither world. The first guardian lowered his sword. You chose balance. The Heart of Eldoria suddenly opened. A powerful wave of light rushed through the underground chamber, passing through Daniel, Lily, his father, and even the Shadow King. For a moment, everything became silent. Then Daniel heard thousands of voices. The people of Eldoria. The people of Earth. Memories from centuries ago. He saw the first guardian creating the boundary between the worlds. He saw Daniel's ancestors protecting the golden key. He saw his grandmother meeting the Shadow King when he was still a young man. Then Daniel saw something no one had ever known. The Shadow King had not created the darkness himself. The heart had. Long ago, when the worlds were separated, a piece of the heart's magic had been left behind. That piece had slowly grown through fear, loneliness, and anger until it became the Shadow King. Daniel opened his eyes. You were never born evil. The Shadow King stared at him. What? The darkness inside you came from the heart. The first guardian looked surprised. Daniel continued. You've been fighting the wrong enemy. The Shadow King looked toward the glowing crystal. For the first time, his anger disappeared. What are you saying? Daniel stepped closer. You don't need to destroy the heart. He raised the white key. You need to become part of it. The Shadow King shook his head. No. But the heart began pulling the darkness from him. Black smoke rose from his body. He cried out. Daniel reached toward him. Let it go. The Shadow King looked at Daniel. Why would you help me? Daniel thought about his grandmother. Because someone should have helped you a long time ago. The darkness slowly disappeared. The Shadow King fell to his knees. His face changed. The burning eyes became ordinary again. For the first time in centuries, he looked human. The heart became calm. Across Eldoria, the black clouds began disappearing. Golden sunlight returned to the towers. The first guardian smiled. The cycle is broken. Daniel looked at the white key. What happens now? His father placed a hand on his shoulder. Now you decide what kind of guardian you want to be. Daniel looked toward the opening above them. Beyond it, he could see both worlds. Earth and Eldoria. Connected by a thin thread of golden light. Daniel understood. The old guardians had protected the worlds by keeping them apart. But perhaps the future required something different. Not separation. Not control. But trust. The white key began to dissolve into thousands of tiny lights. They floated upward like stars. And somewhere far above the kingdom, a new golden doorway appeared. The new golden doorway remained open above Eldoria, shining like a second sunrise. Daniel stood beneath it, watching thousands of tiny lights drift through the sky. The darkness that had covered the kingdom was gone. The golden towers were still damaged, but their windows were beginning to glow again. For the first time, Eldoria felt peaceful. The first guardian slowly approached Daniel. "The key is gone," Daniel said. "No," the ancient guardian replied. "It has become something greater." Daniel looked at his empty hand. "What?" "Trust." Daniel smiled faintly. Lily stepped beside him. "So does this mean the worlds can finally live together?" The first guardian looked toward the doorway. "They can, but only if both sides choose wisely." Daniel's father placed a hand on his shoulder. "Your mother is waiting for you." Daniel suddenly remembered home. "I have to go back." His father nodded. "But you will be able to return." Daniel looked at him. "How?" The first guardian pointed toward the golden doorway. "The door will remain open only for the guardians." Daniel looked at Lily. "Does that mean you can come to Earth?" Lily smiled. "Perhaps someday." Daniel laughed softly. Then a quiet voice came from behind them. "Daniel." He turned. The Shadow King stood several feet away. He no longer wore the black cloak. Without the darkness surrounding him, he looked like an ordinary man, tired and much older than before. Daniel approached him. "What will you do now?" The man looked toward the city. "Repair what I damaged." Daniel nodded. "That might take a while." A small smile appeared on the man's face. "I have waited centuries. I can wait a little longer." The first guardian turned toward the ancient staircase. "My time is ending." Daniel looked at him. "What happens to you?" "I return to the place where guardians rest." The ancient warrior placed his sword on the ground. Then he touched Daniel's forehead. A warm golden light passed between them. Daniel saw thousands of memories. Every guardian. Every sacrifice. Every mistake. And finally, his own future. He saw himself older, standing beside the golden doorway with Lily. He saw children from Earth visiting Eldoria. He saw people from Eldoria walking beneath the ordinary sky of America. Two worlds no longer separated by fear. The vision disappeared. Daniel opened his eyes. The first guardian was gone. Only his sword remained. Daniel picked it up. His father smiled. "Ready to go home?" Daniel looked toward the golden doorway. "Yes." He stepped forward. Just before crossing, he looked back at Eldoria one final time. The city seemed to glow beneath the stars. Then Daniel walked through the doorway. On the other side, dawn was beginning over Briarwood. His mother was standing in the street. When she saw him, she ran forward and held him tightly. Daniel closed his eyes. For the first time in years, his family was together. The sun rose gently over Briarwood. Daniel stood beside his mother, watching the first morning light touch the rooftops. Everything looked ordinary again, yet he knew the world would never feel ordinary to him. His father stood nearby. For the first time, Daniel could remember what it felt like to have his whole family together. His mother looked at him and smiled. "You've changed." Daniel smiled back. "So have you." She laughed softly and hugged him again. Later that morning, Daniel returned to his bedroom. The wooden box that had started everything sat on his desk. He opened it. The golden key was gone. But something new was inside. A small silver key. Beside it was a note. Daniel unfolded it. Only one sentence had been written. Every door has a beginning. Daniel looked out the window. Above the northern hills, a tiny golden light shimmered beneath the morning sky. He knew what it meant. Eldoria was still there. And so was the promise between the two worlds. Years passed. Daniel grew older, but he never forgot the hidden kingdom beyond the stars. The doorway opened only when it was needed. Sometimes months passed without a sign. Sometimes Daniel would wake in the middle of the night and see a golden light shining beyond his window. Whenever that happened, he knew someone in Eldoria needed him. Lily eventually visited Earth. She was amazed by ordinary things. The sound of traffic, the ocean, the bright lights of American cities, and the endless rows of houses beneath the evening sky. Daniel showed her everything. And when Daniel returned to Eldoria, he discovered that the kingdom had changed too. The people had rebuilt the golden towers. The forests had become peaceful. The Shadow King became a guardian of the heart, protecting it from the darkness that had once controlled him. The ancient first guardian was remembered not as a warrior, but as the one who taught Daniel that true strength was not about choosing who should survive. It was about finding a way for everyone to survive. One evening, Daniel and Lily stood together beside the golden doorway. The stars were bright above them. "Do you think this is really the end?" Lily asked. Daniel smiled. "No." He looked at the silver key in his hand. "I think it's only the beginning." The doorway shimmered. Beyond it were two worlds. Two skies. Two homes. And one promise that would never again be forgotten. Daniel stepped forward. The golden light surrounded him. Then the doorway closed softly beneath the stars. But the magic of Eldoria remained. Not inside a key. Not inside a kingdom. But inside every person brave enough to open a door they had never seen before. And somewhere beyond the northern hills, beneath a sky filled with endless stars, the golden city of Eldoria continued to shine. Waiting patiently for the next guardian.